Hello class and welcome to this Legend of Zelda second quest walkthrough right here on Video Games 101 by way of Let's Play with Brigands. I'm your instructor, Professor Brigands, and this comes hot on the heels of our walkthrough of the first quest, the original and normal quest of The Legend of Zelda, which you can check out via the link in the description of this video or as part of the playlist for every single video we've covered, every class we've done here on Video Games 101 in the description. But yes, the second quest, more challenging, longer than the first, even with our step-by-step directions for the most efficient route through Hyrule the second time, and the best way to start early, obviously, to give yourself the best fighting chance here in the second quest. Now, before we get into that, you might be wondering, what the heck is the deal with the second quest? Why does it exist? Maybe you're not wondering, but try to play along anyway, just the same as we bring in Fluff to explain what's the deal with the second quest here in The Legend of Zelda.
Like so many good things in life, The Legend of Zelda's famous second quest is actually the result of a mistake. NES cartridges, especially in the early days, had a very limited amount of memory, so efforts were made to optimize the data which developers had access to. For The Legend of Zelda, amongst other things, this meant designing the various dungeons to fit together like a jigsaw puzzle, so that there was no unused space, as every square on the rectangular grid consumed more data. Co-director, designer, and creator on The Legend of Zelda, Takashi Tezuka, made a mistake in his efficiency and ended up making the dungeons in the first quest half the size they were meant to be, meaning roughly half of the game's data would be unused. In other words, the first quest was initially planned to be roughly twice as long as it ended up being in the end. When it was determined that the dungeon sizes worked as is, and the game would be an acceptable length, it was at the suggestion of The Legend of Zelda co-creator and director Shigeru Miyamoto that they repurposed the remaining unused data for the second quest, creating new dungeons and rearranging the locations of most of the items. So, as Bob Ross might say, the existence of the second quest is the result of a happy accident.
Happy little trees. Thank you very much, Fluff. Incidentally, Fluff has pretty much doubled, I think, the facts that he had for the first quest here in the second quest. And yes, so plenty of fresh things to learn about this original Legend of Zelda game. A bit more about the second quest as well. In terms of difficulty, second quest, a little bit more difficult than the first quest, if you ask me. I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10, which on the frustration scale equates to biting down and then throwing your controller. That's versus the 5 out of 10 we gave to the original quest, the first quest, which only involved throwing your controller. You might bite down every now and then here in the second quest, maybe just wondering where the heck you're supposed to go, but again, fear not. We have the most efficient route for going everywhere in the second quest, knocking out every single one of the dungeons, getting all the items and upgrades, and more importantly, getting them as soon as possible to give yourself the best fighting chance here in Hyrule on your second go around. Pretty much the fundamentals of the Let's Play with Brigands School for Gifted Hylians. Don't worry, we will not show you the commercial again. You can check that out in our walkthrough on the first quest. But yeah, let's run the intro and get into this Legend of Zelda second quest walkthrough right here on Video Games 101. Alright, as we begin a new game, once again we're going to register our name, and Fluff mentioned this during our class on the first quest, but input your name as Zelda, and that's one way to instantly unlock that second quest outside of beating the game through the first time. So let's go ahead and register that. See the sword denoting that we beat that first quest already, so it's time for the second quest. While most of the locations for the dungeons and the items have been rearranged, one thing which has not changed is the ability to grab yourself a very crappy sword early on by entering this cave right here and claiming it. It's still dangerous, it's slightly more dangerous to go alone this time. So claim that sword, and we're going to hit the ground running here. First thing we're going to do is you follow along, we're going to head to the shore over here on the east coast, make some money along the way. Part of what makes this game, or the second quest, more difficult than the first, aside from the fact that I think it's just set up to be a little bit more difficult, is the fact that you can't get quite the head start which you got in the first quest. When we started that first quest, before we even went into that first dungeon, we had 6 hearts. We had the white sword, the upgraded sword. We had the big shield. We had the blue candle. We had the blue ring. This time around, we can only get 1 extra heart before we enter that first dungeon, so we're a ways off from getting that white sword first off. We will be getting the blue ring, so we'll be able to have our damage. We're still going to be bringing in Blaze, by the way, and Gary to cover the item guides and the boss beaters like we had, same as in the first quest, just in case you're maybe picking this up for the first time in a while and, you know, just maybe a little out of practice and just thought, hey, I've never played the second quest, let's give this a shot. We came to the right place. We still got you covered there. But yeah, just make some money here on these Octocrocs, the red and the blues. Grab ourselves some bombs if we haven't found any by the time we get to the first store, which is around the corner on the shore here, ultimately. But yeah, those darker moblins, they're usually good for a bomb drop. Fluff is going to talk a bit more about the science or mathematics behind the different drops here in this quest. We kind of alluded to that a little bit, touched on it just a little bit in that first quest, but he's going to get a bit more into the nitty-gritty of how that works and the numbers behind it. So I'm just going to go ahead and buy these right now so we have them. Blaze. Alright, bombs. Pretty straightforward. Blow stuff up in this game. Useful on a lot of enemies. Certain bosses can only be killed with these bombs, Dodongo specifically, I suppose, but we can bomb open walls to find secret passages, find more efficient routes in dungeons, certain shops, extra rupees. No limit to what you can do with bombs here in Legend of Zelda. Good call, Blaze. So we're just going to be making all the pit stops to grab whatever rupees we can along the way, like moving this right Armo statue here. Be careful when they come alive. As always, give them a cheery little stab to get them out of the way so you can head inside. And grab your pathetic 10 spot on the rupees right there. Again, those are the dark moblins right there, which you can kill to maybe grab the occasional bomb drop. Depending on which number of kill. Well, Fluff will explain it, but yeah, just suffice to say that sometimes these enemies drop bombs, and that's a good thing. Let's leave it at that. Once again, we can move one of these Armo statues, get them out of the way, and head inside and grab ourselves 30 bucks. Better than the 10 we just got, right? By a factor of 3, actually. So go north here. We're going to get a chance to use our bombs for the first time to grab another 30 rupees for free. For nothing. And if we don't die first, actually, this would be a very bad start to this walkthrough. Playing a little fast and loose here, but that does reflect on the difficulty here. We did not have this issue in the first quest. A little rougher here. The route not quite as safe. So grab another 30, bring our total up to 83 at this point. So now we're on a quest to go grab ourselves the blue candle. And like a lot of items, you can buy these at different prices at different points from the different vendors. We want to grab it for as little as possible. Get it for $60, the cheapest price you can buy it for. I apologize for that noise, class. I hate it too. We'll grab ourselves a replenishing heart just as soon as we can, but first things first, let's buy that blue candle for 60 rupees. And Blaze, the blue candle? The blue candle lights up a room, burns some bushes and enemies. The catch, you can only use it once per screen. So you gotta know where to use it. Good call, Blaze, and we will show you where to use that blue candle. First things first, can we get an extra heart and save the ears of our entire class? Right here, right now, possibly on these Tektites. Usually good for some hearts. Alright. Back in the safe range, anything above 1 heart will stop the incessant beeping. Just trying to keep our distance here, they move very unpredictably. Alright, we'll take it, we're hanging on. Alright, so we're gonna grab ourselves a couple more secret rupee locations. To the west here, mind the levers. As I said in the first quest, just be careful about moving forward at full speed here. You might want to let the levers reveal themselves from the sand first before you go after them, or even move around. They're usually good for some cash or some hearts, in this case. We'll happily take that. And we'll happily burn this lower right bush right here. Be careful with the placement of the blue candle when you use it. Otherwise, just come back to the screen and try it again, obviously. But another 30 rupees right here. Now you're thinking, Professor, when are we going to get the good numbers? Where's the 100? Just wait. And there's not that many. Not as many. It's going to be one that we can get before we enter that first dungeon. But yeah, they're a little stingier in this one. But so we grab that 30 from the bush, that bottom right bush. Here we're going to go to the top right bush on this screen after we deal with these levers here. Got a fairy floating around. And Fluff's going to talk about the fairy drops, some bomb drops a little bit later, but grab this 30. And now you should have around 90. That's what we need right now for this next purchase. We're going to move left here and then burn up this corner bush. Same as we did in the first quest. But entering it here, we're going to purchase ourselves the big shield. Very important item early on. Blaze?
The big shield, very important to get this early on in the game. This blocks a lot of projectiles, a lot of fireballs, and other projectiles, shots from certain enemies. Very useful, as the Professor will mention, in some very specific situations.
Thank you very much, Blaze. Yeah, we'll cover those. And actually, hold on. Torch this bottom left bush. We're going to ultimately head down to the southwest portion of the map. Go through the Lost Forest. But yeah, grab those 10 rupees. I'm telling you, it's hard to raise money here in the second quest. We spent very little time in the graveyard in the first quest. Base just gave you the very quick overview of how it's a great place to earn money. Obviously, the grinding spot in this game. Talked a little bit how to do it. We're definitely going to be leaning on that quite a bit here in the second quest. You get very excited when you see a blue rupee for the 5 rupees here in the second quest, actually. I have to say. But yeah, anyway, some more bombs. That's nice. The cap is still 8 until we purchase our first upgrade. That's why we need to raise so many funds here in the second quest, because there just aren't as many cash stops, which we had in the first one, to grab all those 100 rupees for nothing. But head west here, and we do have one opportunity to grab 100 right here, and it is here on this screen. Just gonna thin out the moblins first before we get, we don't want to get mugged as soon as we come out of this bush here with our new 100 rupees burning a hole in our pocket. I've been talking too much about it, you know what I'm saying? So burn a hole in that, and while we're collecting, let's get an overview on the basic items you can pick up here in The Legend of Zelda with Blaze.
Alright, let's cover the basic items you'll find from killing enemies here in The Legend of Zelda. First, the small heart will refill 1 heart to your health total. We have the flashing rupees is worth a single rupee. The solid blue ones are worth 5. These are the most valuable rupees in this game. This is well before the red, the gold, and the subsequent other rupees, which were worth a whole lot more. You have the fairy, which refills 3 of your hearts, and then the stopwatch freezes all enemies on the screen.
Thank you very much, Blaze. We told that moblin right there that we just got 100 from the last guy. Being a little cheap there with the 10, but anyway, here in the Lost Woods, once you're on the screen, the sequence is up, left, down, left, and then you'll find yourself out here on the south side of the graveyard. If you go up here, probably want to watch out. Don't engage with the Lionels right now. Those, I don't know, I guess they're knights, but they always look like dogs with swords in their mouths to me. They will absolutely destroy you with your current armor. Although the big shield will block the, it'll block the shots if you face it at them. Note that you cannot be firing your sword at them or swinging your sword as you are attempting to block. But yeah, here in the graveyard, best place to grind cash here in The Legend of Zelda. The key is to soften up the lead ghost, which is this one that's already there once you get onto the screen. Good pro tip, don't approach the graves from the bottom. They will inflict quite a bit of damage, as if one of the ghosts hits you right there. And they're actually called genies, but yeah, good. If you have the wooden sword like we have here, put 8 hits into them, like so, and then try to just touch 12 graves as far away from that genie, that initial lead genie, as possible. Make sure you keep your eyes on the main genie as well, don't want to lose them. They do tend to move a little bit differently, but we'll talk about that. Move that tombstone right there in the top left section of the graveyard. Make sure you get the heart, not the medicine. And Blaze, how about that big heart?
Alright, the big heart adds an extra heart to your max health total.
Simple as. He's not the best items guru in the biz for nothing class. Thank you very much, Blaze. Once again, softening up the lead genie right there. And we just go up and down and double tap some of these graves. And then once you got the max, there's about 10 ghosts on the screen. Go ahead and deliver that finishing blow and just clean up at that point. Yeah, the lead genie tends to just move in nice straight lines. A little bit slower as well. You don't see him doing any fancy moves, so you can usually pick one out even if you've lost it in the crowd. But when in doubt, just start swinging, right, you know? Especially when you have full health and you can do the charged length shots right there. So once we go through all 6 screens of the graveyard, we need to leave for a while, go 10 screens away essentially, or just go into another, like a dungeon or a building, cave, what have you. So that's how you can reset those to take down those ghosts anew. But pop up here, and what was Dungeon 6 in the original quest is now just this guy's place where he gives people cash, apparently. So now as we backtrack out of here and head east to grab ourselves the power bracelet, let's go to Fluff for a little bit of the inspiration behind the story for The Legend of Zelda.
I referenced the Legend of Zelda co-creator Takashi Tezuka in the opening. In addition to designing the game, he wrote the story for this and its sequel, Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link. When it came to the story inspiration for these games, which laid the groundwork for the entire series, Tezuka was purportedly largely inspired by the popular fantasy series The Lord of the Rings, from author J.R.R. Tolkien.
Thank you, Fluff. Hey, you could see that little bit of a kind of orcish influence in the moblins, some of the other creatures, certainly. We just dropped a bomb right there. That leads to a medicine shop, which we need some other things before we can buy any medicine, but here we go, the power bracelet. Blaze?
Alright, the power bracelet. You can now move certain rocks so that you can teleport around Hyrule.
Thanks, Blaze. Yeah, and that first quest made reference to... Well, first I trashed the power glove, as I made that mistake of calling it the power glove for a second, and then corrected myself saying that the power glove is garbage. Power bracelet is okay. Made reference to the fact that I prefer the whistle, but we may not have that for a while as we blast a hole through the door right there and earn ourselves 30 rupees. Almost at the max of 255, actually, so start making our way up to the northeasternmost part of the map, where the blue ring has been relocated here in the second quest. First, we're going to stop off one screen left, one screen down, and grab ourselves the letter. Mentioned we couldn't buy the medicine earlier. Bombed open the door to one of the many medicine locations here in Hyrule, the second quest, but to get it we need the power bracelet, which we just picked up, and we're going to push this front rock from the top, just push it down, head inside, and grab the letter, show it to the old woman. Blaze, is that accurate?
Alright, the letter. We can't even purchase Water of Life until we show this letter to the old woman. She's very particular about her clientele, apparently, but there you go. Get this letter, give it to the old woman, get yourself some life-giving water. Or water of life, better said.
There you go. Comes in blue and red. Red is a little more expensive, but you get 2 uses out of it versus the blue single use. Might as well just buy that, and then as we make our way to the northeast, we can pick up a little more cash along the way, and then ultimately make that purchase of the blue ring, and about ready to head into the first dungeon after we do that, but that is a biggie right there. I want to make sure that we're putting ourselves in a much better defensive position. Just see all these Lionels waiting for us outside. Kind of a centaur vibe. You certainly get a kind of a Tolkien vibe from these creatures right here. Blasting out the swords. Link wannabes in centaur form. So I said our next order of business is to head to that northeast portion of the map, which we can't do going the conventional route. We would need a step ladder for that, obviously, so while we could teleport right here using our power bracelet with that cluster of rocks to the north there, we need to earn some money. We need 250 rupees to afford the purchase we want to make in that northeastern quadrant, so let's do a bit of grinding here in the graveyard and skip ahead. And I'd say that's on the high end of what you can expect. I'd say normally you'd average 30 to 40 rupees depending on how well you're doing, but not too bad. So I'd say you should leave the graveyard around, I'd say 230 rupees, give or take. Expect to kill a few monsters along the way. Again, if you need to refresh the graveyard, you can just pop into that shop that was just north of that one screen to the right of the graveyard. But once you're ready, you can just exit through the Lost Woods by going to the right. That's how you get out of the Lost Woods. Otherwise, if you go up, left, or down, you'll just keep going in circles unless you do that specific track, which we covered earlier. So while we're moving this way, aside from rescuing Princess Zelda, the other main objective is to collect the units of the Triforce. So with more context information on the Triforce, here's Fluff.
The Triforce, which is one of the most prevalent themes in the Legend of Zelda series, got its design straight from a powerful and influential family called the Hojo clan, which dominated politics in 12th and 13th century Japan. The Hojo clan's 3-triangle-centric symbol is called the Mitsuroko, or 3 scales. In Japanese, the name of the Triforce is Torai Fosu, translating to the 3 powers. In the lore of the Legend of Zelda, the 3 pieces are the Triforce of Power, Wisdom, and Courage, possessed by Ganondorf, Princess Zelda, and Link respectively.
Thank you, Fluff, and it's Ganondorf's Triforce of Power which sits atop the other 2, I think, suggesting that that is the most powerful of the 3, as you would expect. It's right there in the name, actually, but there you go. And I always wonder this aloud, but yeah, did Ganondorf, did they have to go around all over Hyrule collecting 8 pieces of their respective Triforces? Or is it just us? I think in Ganondorf's case, the monsters would just hand it over to him. The Gleeoks, the Gohmas, the Manhandlas of the world being on his side and everything, but yeah, just trying to get a few more bucks. Octocrocs, solid way to make some money here in the forests of Hyrule. Obviously, while we still have the worst sword in the game, which we're stuck with just a little bit longer, unfortunately, going into this first dungeon, which we have coming up. Once we have the big 250 rupee purchase we're going to be making in the northeasternmost portion of the map. Here in The Legend of Zelda on the second quest. Part of the reason this game is longer is not necessarily completely because of the way everything's laid out. That is a part of it, but another part of it is, and I mentioned this, there's just less opportunities to get free money in this game, so there's a little bit more grinding involved in the graveyard. I think we cut down about 2 to 3 minutes of grinding there, so not that long to make yourself, 60 rupees? Something like that. Not the worst. But yeah, we generally Obviously, we try not to edit these videos at all when we're sharing these classes with you, but just in the interest of saving a little bit of time, seeing as this is, say, about 40 minutes or so longer than the first quest, even if you know what you're doing like we're showing here. Just need a few more rupees here. Anyone got a 5 spot in them? Which I've been teasing it, but yeah, if we play well, we will certainly earn ourselves that 5 rupees. As Fluff will mention eventually. Right now, there it is. Alright, so we're about to grab ourselves the blue ring. Ironically, in the spot which was the place to earn a free 100 rupees in the first quest, in this hidden section above here, is now where we grab ourselves the most expensive purchase in the game, spending 250 rupees. At least he knows how expensive it is. Blaze?
Alright, the blue ring may make you pay for it, but it is well worth it. Get this early on, as this reduces the damage you take by 50%.
Thank you, Blaze. Even more important, I'd say, in the second quest than the first quest, where we can't defend ourselves with a better sword early on. That tree, mind you, is still a gambling house, still a place to wager and have a 1 in 3 chance of making some big money. But, yeah, we don't gamble. That's not part of our strategy here on Video Games 101. So when you're ready, go up here into the warp area, if you will. And this one puts us out very close to, or certainly closer to, that first dungeon. Now that we are pretty strapped for cash. And just going north a couple screens here. So much more satisfying killing those levers once you have the upgraded sword just taken down with one hit, at least those red ones. But here we are, same location for the first dungeon. They didn't want to completely flip things on you from the start. At least the sword and the this first dungeon are in the same spot. Once again, we'll be showing you the most efficient route through each of the dungeons to get all the items. And stop off first to take out these Scarayas and get the Boomerang. Blaze?
Alright, the Boomerang. This first one has a very short range. This kills weak enemies. This freezes other enemies. Don't rely on it, though. Not all enemies. It also grabs items if you don't feel like walking over there, or if it's maybe behind a wall that Link can't walk to, just throw the Boomerang to pick it up.
Thank you, Blaze. Ultimately, we're going to want to go through this right wall that we just bombed, but not quite yet. We're going to make sure we pick up the compass and the map first. And Blaze, speaking of those items.
Alright, let's talk about the items you'll find in the dungeons now. Starting with the key, this unlocks one locked door. But if you follow this guide, this Legend of Zelda walkthrough, we generally show you the most efficient route through every dungeon. So by the end of the game, you should have a stockpile of 5 to 7 keys. You will never be needing for a key in this game with this walkthrough. Next, the map shows you the entire dungeon's layout, very useful. And finally, the compass shows you where that boss is hiding out.
Thank you, Blaze. Yeah, speaking of the map, we're really going out of our way to grab it here. Unfortunately, we can't get across there as is, so we're going to have to make the loop around. And to do that, we're going to have to fight our first boss, not the main boss of this dungeon, completely optional. Assuming you don't want that map, but if you do, gotta take it on. So let's throw it to Gary for the first time today with tips on how to take down the Dodongo.
It's Scary Gary's Boss Beaters.
Alright, bombs are the key with Dodongo, only way to take him down. There's 2 different ways to use bombs on Dodongo. First, you can feed them to him. To do this, you want to line up at the top, bottom, or sides of the screen and get Dodongo, or one of the Dodongos, to walk that line with you so you can take away one move they could make to change their course right there, and then feed them when you're pretty sure they're committing to one more step closer to you. Otherwise, you can drop one by the body of the Dodongo when they're walking by, If it explodes at the right time and the right position on them, it'll freeze them, you can stab them, and grab more bombs.
Thank you very much, Gary. Yeah, very satisfying to drop one around the Dodongo and kind of stun it for a second and then get that stab in to take it down, but however you want to do it. Very simple layout for this first dungeon here, as you can see. Brought to you today, this dungeon by the letter E. It's a tie-in with Sesame Street right here. So if you go, I think it's 10 screens within a dungeon, then all the enemies will respawn, as was the case right there with those Gorias. Covered this in our first class, but if you kill all but one enemy in a room in the dungeon or anywhere in this game, they will not respawn the rest of the enemies. But if you kill them all and then go X number of screens, which I believe is about 10 screens, then they will all respawn. So in the case of if you know you're going to be doing a lot of backtracking here and there, then by the way, you got to kill these wall masters to get the key to move through here. They just give you the minimum number of keys here in this first dungeon. No opportunities really to get ahead. Again, assuming that you wanted that map, of course. Best to stay away from the walls, just kind of lure the wall master out. And then, well, that's not the item that we want there, but good news is there will only be one wall master left when we come outside. I think we only had one left, so let's put that to the test right here. But watch out for these bubbles. They will stun you or your ability to use your sword for a few seconds. And there we go. Got our key. Moving forward here. And this is a tough battle actually right here. With 4 hearts. 4 of the blue Gorias throwing their boomerangs around. Bombs are a decent weapon here. Early on in the second quest, actually. Do a little extra damage that your sword cannot. And actually, these Gorias are completely optional. We get nothing for this. So let's rely on Gary and his strategies for beating this boss before we take any water of life. Gary?
Boss beaters.
Aquamentus, very simple, especially if you have the big shield. Want to stab him when he's not firing, you can block his fireballs with the big shield. If you have full health, you can just stand at the back of the room, blast away, take him down, not difficult.
Yeah, no reason to ever take a hit against Aquamentus. Assuming you have that big shield, just post up in front, take the hit to your shield, and just go to town. Good call, Gary. Didn't have to break into our water of life. So 1 dungeon down, 1/8 or 1 unit of the Triforce recovered. One of the few other items which has not changed locations is the white sword, the first sword upgrade. And you need 5 hearts to claim it, so those 2 extra hearts, we got that free one from the graveyard. And, well, I say free, we had to find it in the graveyard. And, of course, the second one we got from that first dungeon. So this is the earliest point at which you can claim the first sword upgrade here in the Legend of Zelda, the second quest. So let's certainly grab it right now, using that boomerang to grab items we couldn't before. Nice having that reach, too, to take out that Tektite. And once again, we can use our sword to defend ourselves from the Lionel shots. They always pause before they take that shot. Just make sure you're not also trying to stab them while they're shooting you. Otherwise, your shield will not be up and you'll take that damage. But anyway, Blaze, white sword.
Alright, the white sword, this does twice the damage of your original sword. 5 hearts are required to get this. Get it early on to make the earliest stages of this game a lot more manageable.
Thank you, Blaze. Yeah, feeling a lot more confident with that white sword in our inventory. And the blue ring early on. So, yeah, Dungeon 2 should be a little bit easier than Dungeon 1 now. Maybe not to find. Probably the first head-scratching moment of, okay, so that's where that is. It's where we purchased the blue ring, speaking of which. That shop. So we gotta move the Armo statue, which is a few screens to the west of here. We're gonna have to go down and around to get there. Always take a 5 rupee. The highest denomination, sadly, here in The Legend of Zelda, at least ones that you can pick up. Not counting the ones that the moblins give you. You gotta follow the lake around. And just north here, couple screens. That's a shop right there where you can purchase arrows for 80 rupees, bombs for 20, and then the big shield for the bad price of 130. So definitely don't get your shield right there, but move this Armos statue, take the stairs down. And here we are in dungeon number 2. See what this one's shaped like once we get that map. Plenty of keys to be found in this dungeon, actually. Should help us shaving off a little bit of time in this and subsequent dungeons when you don't have to go out of your way to get a key. Also, arguably the most important item of this particular quest, we're going to get the whistle in this dungeon. And part of the reason it's so important, not to step on Blaze's toes here, but here in the second quest especially, love killing these Zals with one hit, by the way, now that we have the white sword. Doing double the damage and they're not splitting into the little gels anymore. Yeah, ignore that locked door right there. We need to unlock either that or this door, and then you can bomb your way through the rest of the areas, but first things first, we gotta get ourselves the flute. Or the whistle, rather. I always want to call it the flute, probably because of Mario 3, but yeah, so important because after we're done with this dungeon, we can use it to get ourselves at least a couple of extra hearts, and just, you know, any advantages we can give ourselves early on in this game to make the subsequent dungeons that much easier, we will take it, so. Note that you can kill these Keeses, they're called, the bat creatures, with your Boomerang. Sometimes the most frustrating enemies here in The Legend of Zelda. Bomb this wall just to grab yourself a key. We need to go through that middle section, but we can only reach it by going around. And we've got to face another boss to get there, so with tips on that, here's Gary.
Boss beaters. Alright, the curiously named Manhandla. You want to fire your sword from a distance, or you can drop one well-placed bomb in the center. I like to do this before I've taken out any of the heads, if you will, of Manhandla, so they're going as slow as possible, so I have the best chance of having that bomb take out all 4 heads at once. Otherwise, just roll up your sleeves, get in there, and start stabbing. Not a difficult boss, especially if you've got a little bit of health in the tank.
Thank you, Gary. Yeah, a little inside baseball here, which I'm sure the regular members of our class will recognize, but anytime we bring in Gary a little bit early, you know it's going to be a very fast boss fight and not difficult in the least. And we have a fake wall at the bottom here, just push through. Didn't have these in the last quest so often, but yeah, they are plentiful in this quest, well, relatively speaking, comparatively speaking. But here it is, the whistle. We mentioned it. Finally grabbing it. Blaze.
Alright, the whistle. You can use this to teleport to already discovered dungeons. This shrinks one of the bosses in Digdogger, and it drains certain lakes.
Very important in this quest to actually get to some of the different dungeons and hearts. Use them in the desert a couple times, so yeah, we'll show you all that. But yeah, just to put a bow on the Gary thing, anytime the description of the boss or the tips take longer than actually defeating them, not a difficult boss, but hey, still got to bring them around, still the best in the business, even when the bosses aren't that challenging. As I said, we can use the key on this door or the lower door. We're going to use it on this one here. Note that we can bomb through the lower door here, grab ourselves the compass. Get a bomb pickup on the next room to the right. And these Paul's voices, we can use the bow and arrow to easily kill them. Don't have ourselves those tools quite yet, so just give him a bunch of stabs, take him down, and then bomb through this wall on the bottom. You'll find the compass in here if you take down these dark nuts. By the way, we have an A right here, so we're doing all the vowels so far early on in these dungeons. Did E last time, now we have the A. This dungeon brought to you by who doesn't love Sesame Street, by the way, as we struggle to put out the unpredictable final dark nuts. You never know when or which way they're going to turn. That's why you gotta keep as much distance between yourself and the target as you possibly can there with those dark nuts. Take out all the keys in this room to very fittingly be rewarded with a key, and then head down south here, trying to avoid the traps. Literally called traps in this game, but yeah, probably the most satisfying enemies to kill in this game are the Zals. As we get another key, I told you we'd be doing just fine on keys at the end of this. Nothing to be gotten from taking down these Gibdos? I forget what we agreed on in our first class, but that one dropped a bomb at least. So cut through here and we'll be put right outside the door to the next boss. Probably the toughest in the game. It's not saying a whole lot, but still. If you're not doing so hot on hearts in that particular moment, it can be a tough out. But Gary, what do you got?
Boss beaters. Alright, Gleeok is probably one of the tougher bosses in The Legend of Zelda, but still very manageable. The best strategy is honestly to stand just outside of the head and start stabbing. And the key is to be aggressive, especially when you've got the Gleeok with more heads later on in the game. Because you want to get those shots in before those various floating heads can knock you out of position with more projectiles. So be aggressive, take it out as quickly as possible before it becomes a bigger problem, and you'll take it down.
Thank you very much, Gary. Alright, so I mentioned this in that last dungeon. Now that we have ourselves the whistle, we have access to a lot more of the secrets here in the second quest. A lot of them have been buried underground, so we'll use the whistle to dry up some lakes, reveal some entrances in the sand, all sorts of things. So once again, we're going to enter the Lost Woods to grab the first heart upgrade. Now that we have the whistle, going up, once we're on the Lost Woods screen, up, left, down, left. And while you're following along as we grab the next heart piece, let's go to Fluff for another Fluff fact about The Legend of Zelda.
The Legend of Zelda was one of the first fully graphical, non-linear video games of note. While you had a few non-linear and open-world-like titles, such as Adventure for the Atari 2600, which was purportedly an inspiration for this game, nothing had done it on this scale before. While series creator Shigeru Miyamoto got a lot of enjoyment out of doing something new compared to the very linear Super Mario Bros. Which they had just completed, he had concerns that some players might not understand what they were supposed to do or where to go, even going to the lengths of providing a lot of hints and a mini walkthrough in the manual covering through the first couple of dungeons. He needn't have worried, however, as most players appreciated the added challenge and discovery which came with being one of the most influential early open-world games of all time. Speaking of Mario, they took all of the Super Mario Bros. Programmers as soon as that game was finished and reassigned them to The Legend of Zelda in order to complete and ship the game on schedule.
Thank you, Fluff. Yeah, kind of like how they repurposed all of the Metroid programmers to move over to Kid Icarus. Like we mentioned in that class, once Metroid was done, those two games sharing a lot of similarities there. But come to this screen when you have the whistle, north of the graveyard, and then use it on this screen right here. Give it a second. Mind the tactitize of these Lionel shots. If you don't mind a Game Player's Tape reference, and grab, obviously, the heart on the right. It's our only chance to get that heart, and we can always buy the Water of Life, obviously, for our 68 rupees, so make sure you prioritize and make the right decision there to grab every single heart in this game. And now we're going to use the whistle for one of its other purposes, as Blaze mentioned. Nice way to teleport around the map. We want to be teleported to the first dungeon, which shouldn't be too difficult considering, there you go, it's one of only two that we've completed so far. we've reached. So we're gonna, from that first dungeon, head north and go into the desert. To the right here, we're gonna use our whistle again to grab ourselves a second heart piece. You can actually use it on this screen as well to access another medicine shop, another Water of Life shop, by taking those stairs down, but the heart piece is located one screen south of here, so this southwestern corner of the desert. Use your whistle and enter here to grab yourself yet another free heart in quick succession. Love it. I keep saying free like we're not paying for it. I mean, you know, we're putting in the work. Not quite as much work as it takes to take down a boss, fight through an entire dungeon, but still, glad to have it. And there is one more, actually, area of the desert. I think the developers, Shigeru and co., they just really enjoyed the idea of revealing secret entrances in the desert via this whistle, because you can use it on this northeastern section too to reveal a very underwhelming free 10 rupees. But still, it's free. And you might need that, considering, very frustratingly, we need to make another purchase before we enter our next dungeon. Make sure we have 60 rupees. So, while we're moving towards that shop to make that purchase, let's get a Fluff fact, this time about the rupees themselves, from Fluff.
The design of the rupees is actually taken from the unfortunately named 1984 Famicom release Clue Clue Land, one of the early Nintendo-made black box titles for the Famicom. The color was slightly changed, but otherwise it's the same sprite as the gold ingot from that game. I mentioned this in some of our other classes on black box titles, but the earliest shipments of many black box games, which served as launch titles when the NES debuted in America in 1985, didn't even feature NES ROM chips, but instead included the original Famicom chips with a built-in converter.
Yeah, Clue Clue Land, it always felt like one step away from, well, saying something else. Thank you, Fluff. And Blaze, the enemy bait, as it's called, that we just picked up.
Alright, the enemy bait, you can use this to lure certain enemies, which is kind of a waste considering how much it costs, or you can use it to progress through certain dungeons. Multiple dungeons in the second quest, the single dungeon in the first quest. The professor will talk about it soon.
Yeah, unfortunately not the only enemy bait we're going to have to purchase. And, yeah, mentioned when we did that first class that was actually an update because we'd gotten a couple things wrong on our initial attempt at that class and misspoke a couple times. One of the things which I incorrectly remembered was that the enemy bait could be used to regain your health. And now I'm trying to think of what game that was, because that's not the case here in The Legend of Zelda, the original. But there was another game where you had a similar sort of meat, and its primary purpose was not to refill your health, but it could be used that way. But I don't know, maybe it'll come to me. But here we are in dungeon number 3 now. See what this one is shaped like. This one is actually, gratifyingly speaking of the shape, very linear. In fact, it's probably going back to what Fluff was saying about maximizing space and everything like that. It's literally a straight line for probably 80% of the dungeon itself. So that's good. But yeah, watch out for these more juiced up versions of the ropes. The snakes right here take a bit more damage than they did in the first quest. So that's one difference right there in the enemies themselves. Most of the time, the enemies were unchanged. Love grouping up a bunch of Garayas like that. Let's see why. And there we go. We have L and a bit of an accent mark, I guess, all the way over on the left. Trying to make it seem like it's a lot larger than it is, but come on, Nintendo, it's like 10 rooms. We can all see it. Grab yourself a key there, though. Here we go. Here's the Garaya. Why couldn't we just stab you like we did all your brothers, your friends? But here you go. Equip the enemy bait. And just hit B on him. Blaze said you can use it, as the name suggests, to actually lure enemies over to a certain area. I'm not sure when you would use that, but there's the magical boomerang, or the magic boomerang, I should say. Blaze?
The magic boomerang. Same basic principle as the regular boomerang, but it goes across the entire screen now. So there you go, the magic boomerang.
Thanks, Blaze. And yeah, that's the only reason to go up to the top there. The actual boss and Heart Piece and Triforce are all right here at the start, essentially. So if you really want to make this dungeon fast and you already have a key, you can just pop right in, go to the right. And our first instance of 3 Dodongos, but we only have so many bombs to go around. Now note that alright, so it's not a good start. Gonna use Gary's tip of lining these Dodongos up against the wall. Makes them a little more predictable in their moves. Of course, you can drop one near them as well and then get that stab if you can stun them, but yeah, there you go. That works pretty well. So note that you could have just gone through that locked door, but you would have missed out on the heart piece there. That is the official boss for this dungeon. You probably could have guessed, considering how small the place is, but now that I think about it, as we take out these wall masters, they only gave us 1 key in this entire dungeon, and there were 2 locked doors, so you would have needed to have come here with a key already. Obviously, if you didn't have any spares from those earlier dungeons, you could make a purchase of one at one of the shops, but, you know, obviously we had you covered here. We have a couple extra keys in our possession as we're leaving the place, but yeah, just cut through here, and there is a rather anticlimactic room of regular Garayas to fight here. So they do give you another key, but it's too late to be able to use it, essentially. Sort of their way of paying you back, reimbursing you for the key which you maybe already bought, or certainly the one that you used here in dungeon number 3, which is, again, that L, but with like an accent mark over there on the left. Anyway, so the next dungeon is one of the most expensive in the game, probably the most expensive, considering you need to go in with a minimum of 150 rupees, and maybe a bit more if you plan on using any arrows. The reason being that we need to, 1, purchase a bomb upgrade, that's going to cost us 100, and then there's another room where, to progress through, an old man makes you pay either 1 heart or 50 rupees, and you know there's no way we're leaving a heart behind, so make sure you have 150. There is a rupee spot coming up here, which we can get 30 by burning a bush, and then we're going to spend a little bit of time in the graveyard by warping there. So while we're doing all of that, let's go back to Fluff for another Fluff fact about this game.
I referenced the Legend of Zelda's limited cartridge data in the opening of this class, or specifically, by which I mean roughly, 128 kilobytes. To put that number in perspective, and in the context of other NES games, and again, these are all rough numbers, this was half the size of its sequel, Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link, a third the size of Super Mario Bros. 3, and 1/6 the size of the largest game on the NES, which we mentioned in our class on it, Kirby's Adventure, which was 768 kilobytes by comparison, which translates to roughly 6 megabits compared to the Legend of Zelda's 1 megabit. Other notable games which were purportedly roughly the same size as The Legend of Zelda, at least in terms of data, include Contra, Metal Gear, Castlevania, and Kid Icarus. Roughly.
Yeah, roughly. No letters, please. Thank you very much, Fluff. Note that Fluff was mentioning all good games. I just say that because it's funny to me when you had objectively larger games in terms of data, which didn't do nearly as much with it as games like The Legend of Zelda did, but you know, that's a metaphor for life, really. What's that saying? Comparison is the thief of joy. Anyway, this grinding is the thief of time, so we're gonna go ahead and once again skip ahead a little bit. Note we have to do half of the early licks on the main genie once we have the upgraded level 2 sword. I don't know why I said upgraded. Just the second sword, the white sword. They take half as many hits, so just probably get in 5 shots before you deliver that, or 4 shots I should say, before you deliver that last one, just to be accurate. But yeah, let's skip ahead here. So yes, we earned 38, I think, on that graveyard trip, so as I said, 30 to 40 depending on how well you're doing, how many hits you're taking. Again, we'll bring in Fluff to explain that a little bit later, but we're going to teleport back now to more of the vicinity of the 4th dungeon here in the Legend of Zelda 2nd quest. Now that we have our 150 rupees, and very sneaky, no going up again and again and again here. If you do, you'll just find a fairy, which is good if you need to top off your health. Maybe midway through this particular dungeon you need to tap out and refill your health. That's where you do it. Just go north right there, 4 or 5 times to get to that fairy fountain and get topped off. We got spoiled in that last dungeon though, now that we're in Dungeon 4. Much larger. Many rooms, more than one room in terms of overall width, so larger in that sense. Just beating up on this all, we can grab a key early on in this lower left corner of the entire dungeon here. Couple rooms to the right which earn you nothing, just enemies to fight, so you can skip those. Go north one room up here and we have a new boss. Gary?
Boss beaters.
Alright, Digdogger. First, play the whistle to shrink down Digdogger, then get in close and start stabbing. You can combine this with arrows or a bomb to take him down faster. But yeah, just a nice combination with the whistle, take him down.
Thank you, Gary. Yeah, having the best sword possible. Always useful when taking down those kind of bosses. Well, any kind of boss. It's unnecessary advice right there, but just the same. I referenced these enemies earlier, the Paul's voices. Look like overgrown bunny heads. We have more information on those enemies now with Fluff.
While the large-eared, rabbit-like enemies named Paul's Voices go down easily with a single shot from the bow, in the Famicom version of this game, there was a novel way to defeat them. The second-player Famicom controller featured a built-in microphone, a Famicom exclusive feature which was notably omitted from its NES counterpart. If players made sound detected by the second controller's microphone, all Paul's voices on the screen would be defeated, which is simultaneously both clever and pointless if you ask me, as this is ultimately a lame way to utilize this admittedly half-baked feature of the Famicom. If you want to debate my half-baked claim, consider that the Famicom featured over 1,000 titles and only a few dozen supported the microphone, and those that did typically used it to reveal bonus content and Easter eggs. In getting back to the NES version of The Legend of Zelda, its manual states Paul's voices hate loud noises, a completely irrelevant hint for Western players, and evidence that the manual was simply directly translated rather than updated. But we're here to tell you that the Paul's voices in the NES version hate taking an arrow to their heads, as do most enemies in this game.
Yes, they certainly do. Thank you, Fluff. Hey, we just gotta stab him a whole mess of times for the time being until we get that bow. I guess you were also SOL if you lost your second controller, or the microphone just wasn't working in the Famicom version if you actually wanted to defeat these enemies, but it would have been nice if the whistle killed them, actually, as I pitched development ideas to a game which came out for 40 years ago, but anyway. Blaze, what did we just pick up?
Alright, the magic book. This transforms your magic wand into, well, it allows it to shoot fire, essentially. Doesn't make it all that much better if you ask me. I still never pull it out, but there you go. In case you're wondering, magic book makes that magic wand shoot fire.
Thank you, Blaze. You can see right there we went up from that last room through the wall to get ourselves the 100 rupee bomb upgrade. 4 bombs for 100 rupees. Come on now. Could buy 4 for 20 rupees, but guess it's all about the size of the bag. Note we have a false wall on the left as well. You would think one of those blocks would move, there being nothing else in this room, but that's just, I guess, sort of their way of saying, hey, there's something hidden in here you might want to check out. But seeing as we went through that secret way to get into that room, we don't need to worry about the dark nuts. Note that they will drop a key if you take them out, but we're good on keys, so we're going to ignore them and instead grab a key from this room, which is marginally easier, certainly safer than taking on a room full of the blue dark nuts. Which just, the sentence doesn't sound right, but is what it is. Still waiting on that map to see what this dungeon looks like right here. Doing just fine on bombs. There's, I want to say about 10 rupees in that room to the right, which we just bombed right through. We saw some of these rooms in the first quest. It's a nice presentation, but again, only 10 rupees. Looked a lot bigger on the floor than it does in our wallet. But that's alright, every little bit helps. As I mentioned, this is probably the most expensive dungeon between just the toll that the old man charges us, and the 100 rupees we just paid for those bombs there as well. Single Dodongo blocking our way here. We'll finally get that map, one room to the north. Gonna make us fight for it though. We might be here a while, so let's bring in Fluff for another Fluff fact about the Legend of Zelda. Fluff.
In our class on the first quest here in The Legend of Zelda, I covered where this game takes place in the overall canon and lore of the Legend of Zelda series. Location-wise, Nintendo has confirmed this game takes place on Death Mountain from A Link to the Past, or that northeastern part of the map, which, if you compare the two maps, you can kinda sorta see it topographically, with the existence of the graveyard, occasional trees and water, and lots of mountains.
Yeah, I can sort of see it, if I squint my eyes there. Certainly on the mountain front. Mountain front. Yes, I suppose I can see it. And it's kind of crazy when you go through an entire Fluff fact, still on the same room here, but down to one dark nut. Really want that map. Just want to know what this dungeon looks like here. We've had an A, an L, and an E, and now a D. There you go. If I didn't know better, I'd say they were trying to spell something. Maybe Fluff will have something to say about that. We'll hold out until dungeon number 5. See what we get that time, then maybe we'll bring him in. But now come back out here. They like that mechanic, by the way, in subsequent Zelda games. We had that in Link to the Past at one point, 1 or 2 points, where you have that sort of nexus of the moving block in the center. You can only move it once per time on that screen. This is an instance where we need that step ladder to get that key. There's no fake wall on the right, as you might assume, but bomb through the north wall here. And this is where they make you pay. Make sure you have 50 bucks. Obviously you don't have to pay, you can come back on this screen. But, if you need to raise the funds first, but yeah, in this case, and the Boomerang, in case you were wondering, does not work on that key as well. They really just think that if you want that key badly enough, you'll come back later, and just a bit of a spoiler, we're not even going to get a step ladder on this dungeon. We're about to get something else very useful, which we can stand on, but just a moment. Note that those bubbles in that last room, the enemies which normally when they hit you, you can't use your sword for a few seconds. Those are the flashing ones. If it's a blue one, that fixes the effect of the red one. Red one, if that hits you, you can't use your sword at all. So if you do get hit in that last room by the red ones, you have to go back through that little shaft, and about to lose our first life here. So let's reach into our red medicine. Red life water, excuse me. Turns blue. By the way, I have something to mention. We mentioned this in the first quest, but a couple students clued me in on to something I did not realize was the case in this game regarding the medicine/water of life. Before we get to that, I want to point out something very sneaky here in Dungeon 4. You might think, alright, it's time to grab the Triforce, we got the magic book. No, go through this back wall here after you take down that boss and get at the Triforce room. Take out these dark nuts, and there's going to be 3 Dodongos in the next room. And then the room after that is the one where we can actually get the Raft, which is the other hidden item, and the more important hidden item here in the 4th dungeon. But very sneaky, Nintendo. I see what you did right there. They were having fun with this second quest. But yeah, getting back to the medicine, the water of life. If you're down to the blue medicine like we are right now, and you understandably want to top it off and make sure that you have the red medicine for the next, I'm sorry, I keep calling it medicine, it's just force of habit, before the next dungeon or whatever, you can go to one of the Water of Life shops where they sell the blue and the red, and instead of buying the red for 68, if you already have the blue, you can buy another blue for 40, the cheaper price, and it will upgrade your existing blue to a red. So you can save some money right there, just gives you that upgrade without having to spend that extra 28 rupees, I should say. So thank you very much. Yeah, a couple students mentioned that to me. Very appreciative, something I never knew about this game, so just something to keep in mind to save a little bit of cash. But this is the room where we need to clear everybody out, of course. It's a nice mix of Paul's voices and the dark nuts, and very close quarters as well. So Careful here. Note that when you're stabbing up, your sword goes over the blocks, so you can get some nice, cheap, free hits in from the safety of that other side of the block. And once you take out all the enemies, go over here to the left side and push this block right here. And if we go through that door to the left, that will lead us back to the map room, and we'll be locked out. So don't go through there until... We'll never go through there because we need to go back now and get the Triforce, but we got the raft down here. Blaze?
Alright, the raft, you can use this to cross the water in 2 specific spots on the map to access otherwise inaccessible locations.
Yeah, sooner than later, actually, as soon as we get out of here. Thanks, Blaze. Interestingly enough, they actually swapped the locations of the 4th and 5th dungeons in each quest, so here in the mountains we get the 4th dungeon, whereas in the first quest this was the 5th. We're going to use the raft to cross what was the 4th dungeon in the first quest is now the 5th dungeon in this one. One thing which hasn't changed though, and we're going to be doing first, is that location of the extra heart piece, which is just across the sea, right there in that kind of northeast section of the ocean. So, gonna head down there. This is probably the closest location, Dungeon 2's entrance, to that water there. So let's go grab the 11th heart piece overall. Frustratingly enough, we're still going to be 1 piece shy of being able to afford the magical sword, the best sword in the game, which you need 12 heart pieces to acquire. So can't grab that before we go into the 5th dungeon, because it's a few screens south of the dock here, in that same spot as in the first quest. Kind of those broken dock pieces where you need the step ladder to go out there and get it. And they don't even give you the step ladder in the next dungeon. We have to wait until the 6th dungeon overall to grab that. Some people might go ahead and just, go into that dungeon and grab that right now for that last piece, but, we're not going to teach you that way for what it's worth. Not the end of the world if you don't have the magical sword for the 5th dungeon. Trust that we will get it as soon as we get the heart piece at the conclusion of that 5th dungeon, to make those last few dungeons much more manageable. Everything in this game much more manageable, but one thing which we need before we enter that 5th dungeon, because we have our first Gohma, which can only be killed via the bow and arrows. We don't have the bow yet. We'll get the bow in the 5th dungeon, but we're going to need to purchase the arrows separately for 80 rupees out here from a shop in Hyrule. So if you need to go to the graveyard, do a little bit of grinding, go ahead and do that. I think we're pretty close right now that we can just kind of kill our way to that shop and hopefully earn ourselves the scratch that we need to get the 80 rupees and be ready to enter that 5th dungeon. A couple fairies there. And I've been teasing it a lot as we go to buy these arrows for 80 rupees. Follow along. Fluff, what is the deal with drops in this game?
Despite what some might think, enemy drops aren't entirely random here in The Legend of Zelda. There's a bit of math associated with determining some aspects of when which enemies drop what items. A system made more complicated by the fact that there are always 2 running counters in the game. Your number of overall kills from when you start the game, and your number of consecutive kills without taking damage or warping via the whistle, which resets the consecutive counter to 0. Regarding the consecutive kills, you can actually force a bomb drop from most enemies by defeating your 10th consecutive enemy with a bomb. If you kill that 10th enemy without a bomb, it will instead leave a 5 rupee. This game actually makes an obtuse reference to this consecutive counting mechanic via one of the many denizens of Hyrule and the old man in Death Mountain, who famously states, "10th enemy has the bomb." What the old man neglects to mention is again that you need to kill the previous 9 enemies without taking any damage, then use a bomb on that 10th enemy, and it has to be one of the roughly 75% of enemies in this game who are capable of dropping items. One last force drop worth mentioning is that if you kill 16 enemies consecutively, then you'll force a fairy to appear. Though if you're killing enemies with that level of ease, you might not need it. There's information out there if you want specifics about which enemies are capable of dropping what items when, but ultimately the too long didn't read explanation on the Legend of Zelda item drops is to focus on taking as few hits as possible and you'll be in good shape, items and otherwise.
Solid advice, thanks Fluff. Here are the arrows for 80. Actually, in the Japanese version, I don't even think the old man says that. I think he just tells you to look for the lion key, so is what it is. But anyway, glad to have those arrows now. Glad to have a better understanding about how items are dropped, when they're dropped. But yeah, if you just want to simplify it, too long, didn't listen, just suffice to say that the better you play, the better items that you will get from enemies. And then, of course, in that very specific case of the 10th drop on certain enemies when you use a bomb, that can be useful in the right circumstances as well. Be very useful for us right now. I mean, we don't even have any bombs, but hopefully that situation will be remedied shortly as we take the raft across the sea to the 5th dungeon here in the 2nd quest. Watch out for the likes, those pancake stack looking enemies that, yeah, they want to eat up your big shield that we dropped 90 bucks on, so that's a no to that. We pay for too much as it is in this 2nd quest. Not about to give that up. This is certainly a dungeon where I would appreciate having that magical sword. The whiz robes are aplenty, as they are in the 6th dungeon as well, but the thing about the 6th dungeon is you can get that step ladder which you need to get that heart piece, which would put us to 12, so that we could afford, if you will, the best sword in the game. It's rather early on in that 6th dungeon, so not the worst idea if you did want to do that. We'll show it, obviously, when we get to Dungeon 6. We're just gonna go along as is for the moment, and we're gonna ignore that Gohma for just 1 second because we have no way of fighting it. Go down here and get the bow. But I just wanted to mention that because I'm sure some students play that way and maybe would mention that, so just wanted to acknowledge that. But now that we have the bow and the arrows which we purchased, let's get some tips on taking down a very frustrating boss in Gohma.
Boss beaters.
Alright, Gohma. You want to stay in front of that eye as much as possible despite the projectiles which are desperately trying to knock you out of position, and just have those arrows out, the only thing that can hurt Gohma, and fire one off as soon as the boss opens that eye.
Good call, Gary. And Blaze, pretty straightforward, but the bow?
Alright, the bow and arrow. Each arrow is going to cost you a rupee. This is effective against certain bosses and enemies. Need these to beat the game. The silver arrow in particular, which you'll get later on, admittedly. But for right now, the basic arrows, just fine. Make sure you have these. And the bow, sold separately. But yeah, there you go. Bow and arrow.
Sold separately or earned in the case of the bow itself. But note that there are 3 reds and 1 blue in this one as we go through the fake wall on the left. Again, if one of those reds touches you, you gotta touch up on one of the blues to be able to use your sword once again. We have a full room of keys here to grab a key. I think they like doing that, putting the keys and the keys together. I don't blame them. Bit of fun right there, but... So let's see what we got. We got the map on the next screen. What have we had so far? The L, the E, the D, the A. If I were a betting man, I would say this dungeon is shaped like a Z. But we will see. Another enemy right here in the Vires, which split into keys. If we had the magical sword, we could one-hit kill them and get some power-ups from them or items from them, item drops, but when we're still weak with the white sword, just splits them, and frustrating as we have to hunt them down to get ourselves the map. And Z, there you go. Collect your winnings at the window. Fluff?
I talked earlier about the shapes of the dungeons fitting together like a puzzle if you brought them together in order to maximize data efficiency. If you look at the shapes of the first 5 dungeons here in the 2nd quest, you'll find that they also each clearly resemble a different letter in Zelda, albeit out of order.
Thank you, Fluff. Yeah, that's true. We went E, A, L, D, and then Z, so not even backwards. There's no rhyme or reason for any of that, but yes, certainly does spell Zelda, and that certainly makes sense right there. Got a Manhandla, again, if you want to use some bombs, if you have them right now. We do not. Haven't been this bomb pour in a while, actually, hoping for a drop before too long. Might have to reach into our water of life here, hopefully not too late. Alright, there you go. By the way, on that last room, you could see there was a key on the other side of the water right there. Cannot grab that unless you get the step ladder. It's almost as if the game is telling you to go out of order and hit the 6th dungeon before you do these others, but certainly could have gotten a key in that last dungeon had we been to 6 first as well. Which is why, again, I acknowledge that some students in our class will probably mention, yeah, I like to do 6 before some of the others, and that's fine. To each their own. We are just going in order here. No reason to fight the Vyres in that room. Got another Gleeok. So as per Gary's recommendation, just get in there, roll up those sleeves, and start stabbing away. Don't let them knock you out of position. Or rather, you will get knocked out of position, but quickly get yourself back into position. And probably the most exciting thing, even more so than grabbing this piece of the Triforce right here, this 5th unit of the Triforce overall, is that we now have our 12th heart container, or 12 hearts in our life total, which means we can now qualify to get ourselves the magical sword, the best sword in the game. Say it like it's a sweepstakes, we now qualify. It's like winning the lottery, though, compared to this crappy sword we've been using here. Comparatively crappy. It's all relative. The wooden sword is very crappy. Extra crappy, if you will. So to grab that, we're going to make a beeline for that, the best sword in the game. Obviously, before we found it in the graveyard. Actually, this time the dungeon entrance for Dungeon 6 is in the graveyard. Just south of where we found the sword in the first quest, but after we cut through here, I didn't mention this before, finally some bombs. Thank you very much, Moblins. Get some more, actually. Wouldn't be the worst thing. Alright. Again, up, left, down, left, and when you come out of here, if you use your whistle, didn't mention this, but on this screen right here, a chance game, a gambling game appears in the sand or the ground right there, so we do need to earn some money because I'd like to replace my Water of Life, but I'm not a gambling man, so we're gonna spend some more time in the graveyard here again. Remember, it takes 4 hits to soften up the genie with this sword. It only takes 2 when you have the best sword, but yeah, get those 4 licks in with the white sword and then deliver that finishing blow right there. Just want to make sure we have 68 bucks so we can buy that medicine, that Water of Life, before we move on. As we jump ahead, just remember also the lead genie doesn't move diagonally. They have that very predictable up and down move set, just like Link himself, so pop in here now, grab ourselves the red Water of Life. And now to get the magical sword, the best sword in the game, we're going to need to go to an area we didn't even touch in the first quest, which is all the way north, kind of like right dead center in the middle of the map here in Hyrule, up in the mountains. In the first quest, there's literally nothing where the Master Sword is kept in this quest. Just an arrow pointing you away in the opposite direction as if to say, this is a dead end. Why are you wasting your time? Go ahead and rescue Zelda already. Alright, game. But yeah, here, you think there'd be more protection there, just a single line L. Few boulders, few rocks dropping down every now and then. But just off center, at the very northernmost point on the map, if you push that rock out of the way, obviously you have to have the power bracelet. Grab yourself the magical sword, best sword in the game, Blaze.
Alright, the magical sword is the most powerful sword in the game. This is 4 damage, 4 times more powerful than that original sword, twice as powerful as the white sword. You need 12 hearts to pick this baby up. Well worth it, get it as soon as possible.
Excellent advice, thank you very much, Blaze. Actually, I'm curious, class, leave a comment. When do you generally make it a point to, or how do you prioritize and do your dungeon order here in the Legend of Zelda second quest? Do you hit that 6th dungeon a little bit sooner to grab yourself that step ladder out of curiosity? I don't think we suffered for it, but yeah, ultimately we got ourselves the magical sword at the earliest time going in order here. I think the only difference would be, as I already mentioned earlier, just maybe going in there and grabbing the step ladder early from Dungeon 6 to grab an extra heart a little bit earlier. Probably wouldn't complete Dungeon 6. It's no easier than Dungeon 5. Has lots of those whiz robes still. I want to make it very clear that we do not need any cash before we enter the next dungeon. I just want to spread out my grinding because I know we'll need the money eventually. So, just want to make that clear. So let's skip ahead. Pretty good haul, 57 rupees. So come to this screen in the graveyard when you're ready for the dungeon. Pull out the whistle and play it on this screen. And instead of pushing that tombstone, that moves it out of the way so that we can access Dungeon 6 right here. Got some whiz robes early on. Thankfully they're not blocking anything. They will leave us a bomb drop if we clear them out here, which I'm kind of hard up for right now. So I'm going to go ahead and take out the last of them. Grab 4 bombs. There's a key to the left if you went in there via some whiz robes. No need to fight this party room right here. Likes, whiz robes, all the above. You can bomb the north door, but come back to that. Got some fires in this room. Very satisfying taking them down now with one shot. No more red keys as a result of our weakness. Yeah, unlock this door to the left. Another party room. They love it. Just the combination. Got whiz robes, likes, got a bubble to disarm you for a little bit. Too much. Alright, so I got a trap room here. An odd 5-piece rupees just sitting there. But, yeah, just move that block right there. Nothing to kill this time. Head down these stairs and collect yourself finally on Dungeon 6. The step ladder, Blaze.
Alright, the ladder allows you to cross a single gap, get some items you wouldn't otherwise be able to get in this game, traverse dungeons more easily, and yeah, pretty much it, the ladder.
Better late than never here in the second quest. Thanks, Blaze. You can go through that locked door to the north just to get a cryptic message from an old man. South of the arrow mark holds a secret, probably a reference, or exactly a reference, to the magical sword which we got. Yeah, just a key hanging out there in a very busy room. Take that. And make sure you leave this room being able to use your sword. I just keep getting hit by the red bubble here. One annoying thing about that step ladder is, you know, putting it in the wrong spot sometimes and scrambling your brain trying to get it off, or knowing which way to walk back so you can get off the ladder and pick it up again. But anyway, so now let's bomb through that top wall, as I mentioned. If we go through this door to the left, we can grab ourselves the map. We know we're done collecting letters, or rather dungeons, looking like letters, resembling letters. This isn't a Tony Hawk game or anything. Like, there's a number of games where you collect letters, but Tony Hawk is the first one which comes to mind of that series. Come on, like. Let's look at a stack of pancakes. And there you go. I guess it's supposed to be a dragon or something along those lines. They dispense with the names, the specific names for the dungeons after the first quest, so. But yeah, bomb through there to grab yourself the compass. Try not to get hit by a red bubble there. So satisfying taking these Vyres down now with a single hit from our magical sword. Magical experience, if you ask me. Could be where the name came from. Go through the fake wall right there and push this middle left block. Friendly bubbles right here. If you go north through that door, you can fight a bunch of whiz robes, grab yourself a key. We're good on keys. We're just going to go straight to what kind of amounts to a miniature boss rush here late in the game, actually, or late in this dungeon, better said. Keys won't drop anything when you take down that last one, but just to make this room a little less annoying. Kind of looks like a dragon, maybe a Brontosaurus, actually. Speaking of dragons, here's Gleeok. Much simpler when we have the magical sword as well. A lot of red bubbles in this room, be very careful. Just in the sense that you don't want to have to backtrack if you don't have to. Just push that block and hope for some luck like we did right there. This will take us to kind of the edge of the head, top of the head. And you got a Manhandla. If you feel like throwing down, just for the glory like we do. When you got the good sword, why not, right? This will take you back the way you came from, if you want. I guess if you don't have any cash to take on the Gohma right here, but we're very moneyed right now. Another reason to grind is if you're not great with your aiming like I am sometimes, or like I am not sometimes. Just trying to get in position because you know it's on that schedule of when that eye's going to open again, but there you go. 13th heart overall, 6th Triforce unit overall. We're in pretty good shape here as we're coming up on the final stretch. Just a few more dungeons to go. And while we're still here in the graveyard, I might as well do a little bit of grinding. We're going to need 50 rupees for the next dungeon to pay off another old man. Makes it sound like for something salacious, but no, just either that or our heart, and you know we're not going to part with that. So let's skip ahead once again. Pretty good haul that time, I would say. Didn't take a lot of damage, so got more of those 5-piece rupees for every kill. Not every kill, but you know what I'm saying, on those 10th kills. And while we're teleporting, I guess back to the third dungeon entrance. Here we go. Closest to the southeastern shore to grab that heart piece along the coast. Let's bring in Fluff for another Fluff fact about the Legend of Zelda.
I mentioned earlier about Shigeru Miyamoto's early concerns that players might have difficulty solving the game's puzzles, including simply figuring out where to go in this non-linear game. Nintendo of America's president at the time, Minoru Arakawa, echoed those concerns, specifically with regards to American audiences, and worried they would find the game too complicated. Arakawa was purportedly so concerned about Americans' abilities to figure it out, and consequently enjoy the game, that he debated not releasing it in North America altogether. Parts of this concern likely stemmed from the fact that he tested the game on his American employees, and discovered most of them didn't get into the game right away. All of those who tested it ended up ultimately praising the game, though it took many of them several hours to figure things out.
Yeah, we've done a lot of classes to this point, and now that I think about it, Fluff's shared a decent number of facts regarding Japanese developers of the 80s and 90s, showing concern at our ability, our Western players, to handle the difficulty of their games. I'm starting to get a little offended on behalf of my fellow children of the 80s and 90s, but that's fine. Alright, so the entrance to Dungeon 7 is right here on this left bush we're going to burn. I like doing it from this side. A little bit more difficult to get it to burn from the other side, so reveal it on this side, and then swing all the way around. Now that we have just 2 heart pieces to go and enter the dungeon for level 7. Another very linear looking dungeon once you see the layout, the floor plan. There is just one room to the left as soon as you come in if you want to grab the compass actually. Let's pick that up. Literally the only thing, this is like the lower left corner of the entire map, and then everything else just kind of spirals around like a long snake to the center, but grab the compass right there. Now we're just going to go over to the right for a very long time. Although it's laid out very linearly, it's not accessible in the same way, so it doesn't match the looks once we actually have that map. Nothing to be gained in this room, except we can top off our own individual bomb count here. But I just like playing this game, so let's see how many stabs it takes to get to the center of one of these Paul's voices. I guess it was 3. Very fitting considering the reference I was starting to make right there. How many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop? I think it was 3 in that commercial as well, wasn't it? Someone can agree or disagree with me in the comment class. Mind the red bubbles here. Simple enough fix if you get hit, though. Blue one right on the other side of the water. Guess if you really want a challenge, you can just stunt yourself and keep moving forward. Not something we're going to recommend here in this walkthrough. Remember when it used to take a whole mess of hits to take down those enemies? Now just a few, by virtue of our master sword here. Magical sword, excuse me. We wouldn't have the master sword for a couple games yet. But push that block, and you'll see we are now in the kind of the northwestern portion of the map overall. We do this so that we can access the next item in this game. Useful one. Another one of those items that it would be nice if we got it significantly earlier in the game, but, you know. I get it. There's, what, 9 dungeons? Spoiler alert. I'm sure you knew that by now. In the second quest, same as the first, but, yeah, you could tell. I think I mentioned this before, maybe, that it just seemed like maybe Nintendo was running out of ideas when it came to the power-ups, the different items you could get. Like the magic book. It's completely unnecessary. Just modify your magic wand, which in itself was unnecessary, but the red candle, Blaze.
Alright, the red candle. Same basic idea as the blue candle. You can use it to light up rooms, burn some bushes and enemies, but now we have unlimited uses for every screen.
Thanks, Blaze. Yeah, it's a weird dungeon layout when you get the map and you see. Literally, when you go down those stairs, the only 2 rooms you can access are the exit of the stairs and then the red candle entrance area. So, just those 2 isolated rooms right there. Got a Manhandla here. Got 12 bombs, why not? Alright, well that's not... Well, that worked out better than I thought. I guess he kind of flew into it as they were taking damage. We'll take that though, yeah, take him out and then push the block right there. We're in the southeastern portion of the map now, and if we go 1 room up, that's where we can grab ourselves the map. Nothing to be gained in this room except some satisfying stabbing from the safety of our little step ladder here. You know what? It took so long for us to get it, I'm going to enjoy it. I've decided. Well, now I need a touch-up. Little help, Blue Bubble. That's just a recipe for disaster right there, trying to face one of those, I guess the Dark Nuts. I always want to call them Lionels and vice versa, but just because they both come in red and blue and they're very, very dangerous and kind of have similar move sets. Even though these guys are always moving, the Lionels, they just stop when they're about to take a shot. There's our map, and you can see now, kind of see the snake, the sprawling layout right there. And a seemingly very linear map, but yeah, not the case. Lots of staircases, which lead you to different sections, lots of dead ends otherwise. There's actually, I mentioned the 50 rupees, which you needed to pay off the old man. Here in Dungeon 7, there's actually 2 old men who demand 50 rupees. Maybe it's the same guy, I don't know. No reason to fight these Dark Nuts, by the way. There's fun, and then there's fun. I don't think I said that. There's fun, and then there's not fun. That was not an instance of fun. That was an instance of not fun. Fighting a room full of Dark Nuts when there's nothing to be gained, and there's no way to really cheese it. Don't like that we can't use our big shield on some of these fireballs as well. You can use it to repel, let's say, or block 80% of the ranged attacks you can take in this game, but yeah, there you go. Have our medicine, our life water on demand. It's such a terrible name. I'm sorry, class. Water of life. Hate it so much, in case you couldn't tell. But push that block right there in the trap room and reveal the staircase and head on down. spits us out in another room full of dark nuts. Another room where we don't need to fight anyone unless we're trying to backtrack and head back where we came from, so just avoid them. Go right here. Begrudgingly pay the old man 50 rupees. Yeah, son of a... Alright. Head down here. If you go up, there's a Manhandla and 50 rupees at stake. Yeah, I think we're going to need this medicine. Use that right now. Clear out all these dark nuts, and you'll be able to reveal another staircase, which will ultimately take us to the boss, which I believe is another Gleeok. But, yeah, if you went up from that intersection, that junction room, the four-way intersection, you would run into another old man who would charge you 50 rupees, and there's another, just a 4-bomb pickup, not an upgrade, also to be found in that area. So, not where we want to be, so let's just head this way, push that block becomes a staircase, and just cut on through. And we got 2 rooms of dark nuts before we take on Gleeok. Make sure you can stab before you leave this room. We got a room full of dark nuts in here, your prize being a bomb, and that door being opened. When you go ahead and take them all down. So knowing that we're about to get 4 bombs for defeating these guys, let's go ahead and use a couple feud, get ourselves to 8. And pretty much resign myself to the idea that I'd like to buy 1 more Water of Life before we take on the final dungeon, that being 9, so throwing strategy out the window to some extent. Been a long second quest, you know. Link's a little tired. Just finished on the heels of that first quest last week. Take down that Gleeok to get the penultimate heart container and penultimate Triforce piece as well. Unit, excuse me. Using the manual's language. Or the intro's language, better said. So I may have misspoke earlier, because this next dungeon may be the most expensive overall. We need to buy another enemy bait for 60, and we want 100 for a bomb upgrade in the next dungeon, so want to make sure we're at least at 160 for the next dungeon, so we're going to head back to the graveyard ultimately. By the way, no bombable wall right there on that last screen where we got that heart on the first quest. Nothing to be found there. There is a gambling game if you bomb in the right spot on that last screen we were just on. And if you go 1 more screen over if you bomb in the right spot, or should I say the wrong spot, that will cost you 20 rupees as you do some unsolicited remodeling of his front door, or actually creating a front door. I guess he was fine to just exist in there with no air, food, water, but anyway, while we're making our way over there, let's bring in Fluff for another Fluff fact about the Legend of Zelda. What do you got, Fluff?
I'd like to amend something I said earlier when I mentioned that the NES manual for this game is a direct translation. One exception is in the information on Digdogger, as in the Japanese manual, it hints at the importance of the whistle by saying shockwaves will cause its body to shrivel up. In the NES version, the manual simply states that they'll shrivel up when attacked. Brace for an infinitely long effort if you try defeating this boss solely with your sword.
Yep, yeah, dig in for a, no pun intended, a very long battle. Thanks, Fluff. So we're going to as close to the northeastern corner of the map as possible here so we can purchase the enemy bait for 60 rupees. You can buy it for 100 in some shops, but we don't like getting fleeced here on Video Games 101, so that's where we're headed right now, and then from there we will head to the very sneaky and difficult to find entrance for dungeon number 8. So let's bring him in one more time while we're working our way through this. Fluff, got anything else you can tell us about this game?
The Legend of Zelda was the first NES title to feature the ability to save your progress. It was able to do this by including a RAM chip in the cartridge, which progress was written to and read from with a small battery to power it. While this was a more typical feature for Famicom games, this was usually omitted by most publishers for their corresponding international releases in favor of passwords due to the RAM chip and battery's comparatively higher cost, which ate into their profits. Speaking of this chip, You may recall that most games which feature the ability to save your progress regularly prompted you to hold reset when you turned the power off. This was because the NES's CPU didn't go to zero current instantly, meaning it goes to a weaker state midway through powering off, which can cause random data to get written indiscriminately, even potentially to the RAM chip, thus causing your save files to get overwritten and lost. Holding the reset button forces the CPU to essentially freeze without doing anything during the powering down process, thus ensuring your data is protected. One downside of the save feature, aside from eating into those sweet profits, was that batteries which powered the RAM chip would eventually die, losing your data in the process.
Thank you very much, Fluff. Yeah, that's one of those messages which I recall from my childhood, seeing it in so many games, and I'm not honestly sure that I ever knew why the games recommended that, or the exact science behind it, so glad to finally have an explanation for that one. Thank you. Yeah, I'd be curious to see if some of the games I haven't played in a while, if my batteries still hold up on some of those old NES games. I've never tried replacing one. Might make for a fun video, but... So I mentioned that the entrance to Dungeon 8, very tricky, very concealed, and difficult to find. One is you need the step ladder, and two is you need to bomb in just the right spot on this last screen, actually. You can kind of see the squares of the rocks. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, about 5. It's the 5th rock from the left right there. Use your step ladder, drop a bomb, and here we are in dungeon number 8. Make sure again that you have 100 rupees when you come in here. Make sure you have that enemy bait on top of that. Watch out for the red bubbles there in that first room. If you do get hit, there's a blue bubble not too far from here, actually. Use other means to kill these Gorias, obviously, but go through this fake wall to the south here from that screen. Use one of your remaining keys, which you should still have if you're following along with this Legend of Zelda second quest walkthrough. Like when certain enemies don't completely render in. Kind of dangerous on the screen, admittedly, to hang out against the wall with the wall masters when you have the red bubbles there, but there is a blue one you can touch up with. And actually, I mentioned the magic wand earlier, assuming we'd already gotten it, because that's how little I care about it, but we just got it now, after the book. Blaze, the magic wand.
Alright, the magic wand, this shoots a 2 damage blast across the screen, like those whiz robes we're using, but if you want to use it, go for it. I myself don't rely on it too often myself, but in case you were wondering, the magic wand.
Yeah, like I said, it was such an afterthought for me that I just forgot that we hadn't even picked it up yet, so there you go. Even Nintendo didn't care in the second quest, just showing their true feelings on the magic wand, but there you go. Bomb through this bottom wall here to have a very lively room full of Gorias. Take them out to grab the map, which looks very similar, I'd say, to that last dungeon in terms of layout. Lots of seemingly very linear stretches of the dungeon, but at the same time, lots of staircases you need to access to get to other areas, which ultimately have you jumping around. Gotta say, lots of opportunities to make money in this dungeon, which is good. It's like they know they're about to charge you an extra 100 for that bomb upgrade. And we have the Goria who's hungry, and just a couple screens from this one. One last word on the magic wand, though. It is nice that it does the equivalent damage to the white sword, and in case your sword ever gets temporarily disabled by a bubble, or you need to hit the other bubble to get it reactivated, you can still use that wand to get around, so worth mentioning. No reason to fight this Digdogger, so walk on right through. Feed this Goria, maybe the same one we fed earlier, who knows? He knows we're a sucker. Link all of a sudden forgot that he can kill them with one hit, and feeling sorry for all the hungry enemies in this game that Ganon can't be bothered to feed himself. And there is the compass for Dungeon 8. Now we just have a couple obligatory Garaya battles to open the next two doors. We do get a key out of this one, though, I believe. If we can salvage without taking any damage here, there we go. Yep, grab our key right there. Although that will be a moot item in just a moment, same as it was in the first quest, and I think we got the skeleton key, the magic key, if you will, very late in that game as well. I think also in Dungeon 8. That's what we're coming up on here. Is there double pack in the items here in these dungeons? We're at that time of the game. As you could probably tell, there's nothing going on in this room right here by the presence of a single Digdogger. Couple wall masters, or a number of wall masters here. Only dangerous if you allow one of these red bubbles to touch you. Only thing to be gotten in that room if you do take down all the wall masters is 4 extra bombs for you to carry, which you might need actually, considering in the next room we have 3 Dodongos to take down. Get like a nice placement and maybe take down or stun 2 of these as they're kind of passing one another. Wall trick always works, obviously, assuming you have 6 bombs. Just make sure they commit to one of those tiles. They're like sort of in between where they would normally have the opportunity to peel down, and whichever surface that you're up against, just walk away. I did it. No prize for that. But again, if you do one of the stun stabs, that's when you get some extra. And that was bound to happen. Never to worry though, there is a blue bubble on the other side of this staircase here, as these keys just get a free pass for once. Their lucky day. Yeah, there's also some red bubbles on this side as well, but not so much interested in those. And the opportunity to purchase more bombs is coming up on the south side of the dungeon. Stalfos in this room can fight back, so be aware. Be careful. I'll have to say, in comparison to the final dungeon, much like the Dungeon 8 in the first quest, not too difficult as we move that block right there. We finally get the magic key with that cute little lion head on the handle. Blaze.
Alright, the magic key. Even though we have plenty of keys, the magic key makes all of those redundant. So much for that secondhand key market. This unlocks unlimited doors, locked doors specifically, in this game. Of course, we get it so late in the game that it really doesn't matter at this point, but there you go with the magic key.
Thank you, Blaze. Ironically, needed a key to access the magic key, but we had enough without worrying about backtracking or anything. And I love this room. So many ropes, especially love it when you can freeze them all. Every little bit helps, as again we need that 100 rupees for the bomb upgrade in just a moment. You can ignore those stairs, they don't take us anywhere we want to go. It's relatively linear from here on out. We will have to go a little bit out of our way to make sure that we get those 100, or the 4 extra bombs for the $100. Slash rupees. You get kicked out of that area if you come through another staircase. Lots of unnecessary staircases here in dungeon number 8. Gotta take out all these Garayas and take these stairs down. These will lead us to the main section that we want to be in. Get some bombs right there on top of it. A couple mold orms to handle in this room, which is just absolute joy when you have this sword. Yeah, go ahead once you take him out and bomb through this south wall. Ultimately, we want to go through that top door, but yeah, the bomb upgrade will be down and to the left. Just for fun, and the 5 spot right there. Those Garayas. Just a couple swings from our sword right here to take down that Aquamentus. I'm so glad that they didn't scale the enemies up with us in this game with whatever weapon we had. Their dangerous room, pairing some wall masters with... Ooh, I think we just got in the last one in time. And then push that, yep. Once you take down that last of the wall masters. Great name for an enemy, by the way. Alright, finally. I bet we would too. Not even gonna stab the man. That's how tired Link is at this point. Alright, so now just backtrack to that right corner, and then head all the way up. We have one last, I think it's another trio of Dodongos to face. And after that purchase, we should be good on bombs. Use our snazzy magic key to open that door. Like a magic bomb bag, that would be nice. Infinite bombs. Without having to worry about placement or anything like that. These slow-moving Triceratops enemies. Goes one. There we go. You have to be almost as accurate and a little bit lucky, too, with your placement when it comes to stunning them, as you do with feeding it into their mouths. It might be a little more difficult, actually, because I like that you can drop one and then they'll walk on top of it to swallow it there. But anyway, doesn't matter. We have all the hearts now. We have the final of the 8 Triforce units. Let's finish strong, class. Head on to the final dungeon here in the second quest of The Legend of Zelda for the NES. To access it, cross the water right there with your ladder. And it's pretty much in the exact northwest corner of the entire map this time around. Nothing with the double rocks. And if you got the cash, there is a place where you can top off your medicine. Might as well just go big. We got 69. We bombed it open earlier, but if you have not yet already done so, that's where it is. Guarded by a few Lionels. Stop in, buy a bottle of the red stuff, and I think we're all set to take on the final dungeon here in The Legend of Zelda second quest. And this is one exception, I would say, a happy exception. There's another guy who charges us 20 bucks for destroying his front door right there, but that's only if you go inside, so I just like to annoy him, but immediately run away. But yeah, drop a bomb right there for the entrance to the final dungeon, and just like the first quest, these doors will not open unless you have already gotten all the pieces of the Triforce. So keep up here. There aren't as many different ways you can go as in the final dungeon in the first quest, but yeah, cut through this invisible wall here on the right from the start. We want to make sure we get all the items first and foremost, the silver arrows as well as the red ring, both very important. One essential, one optional, but both very good to have, obviously. Rare that we can leave a Wizrobe's room with all of our health there, but if they go all out here with invisible walls, bombable walls, but yeah, not quite as overwhelming and vast as the final dungeon in the first quest. Not as much of a maze either, gratifyingly, I have to say. Don't even have to fight this Patra, by the way. Just go through this invisible wall on the left, take out these whiz robes, and then the staircase here will lead to the first of the 2 items that we want to grab here. It's pretty simple right off the bat, grabbing the first essential item. This is the one needed to complete the game in the silver arrows, as Blaze mentioned earlier. Do not try to take on Ganon without first procuring these silver arrows and having at least a few rupees so that you can get a shot off on the big man. Actually, if you take down that Patra, you get the map for this dungeon, just to mention that, but we are pressing on, ready to rescue Zelda. We already put up the trope list, right? I think we did that earlier. Backtracking all the way to that initial junction of rooms, so go south here. Back to that initial room. This time we're going to go left. Next item on our checklist is going to be that red ring. Got some very fast moving land molas here, I believe they're called. Not even sure if we ran into one of these in our first quest with maybe the route that we took, but they go down just as easily as most enemies in this game, assuming you have the magical sword. Bad time to lose our big shield, so let's just ignore these likes. Cut through to the left. Stab some fires just because it feels oh so very good. Any enemy that used to take multiple hits and break into other more annoying enemies, arguably, that's just always a good time to beat up on with that sword. Pay your electricity bill, Ganon, for goodness sake. Getting a lot of use out of our candle here in this dungeon. So nothing opened on the right, you'll notice, but we can bomb this left wall. And the only reason we're doing that is so we can go back in here and that the block will be reset in the center. Again, something you see in subsequent Zelda games. Link to the Past, obviously. Which we did a class for, incidentally, here on Video Games 101. You can check that out via the playlist in the description. Got every class we've ever done here on this channel. No need to fight a lot of enemies at this stage in the game, honestly. Just cutting through as quickly as possible. Take the north door here. Again, don't need to fight anybody, but if it makes getting through a little bit easier, go for it. And in staying consistent with Link from our first playthrough of the first quest, we don't like being told what to do, but we will go through to the next room. It is kind of nice that he said that, because, you know, that's your tip that there are hidden walls right there, invisible walls, whatever you want to call them. Although I think we probably make it a point to check every single wall in this game at this point, you know? Ganon went all in on the invisible walls, as you can tell. Another very fast pair of land molas here. It's fun to take them down, even though they're incredibly unpredictable and usually do a decent chunk of damage to you, but because there's little strategy you can do when they're moving that fast. Moving around like some of the more unpredictable enemies, but there we go. Link looking good in red. Blaze?
Alright, the red ring reduces your overall damage you take at the beginning of the game by 75%. Once again, why do we have to get it so late in the game, but very worth it for this final stretch.
Agreed, as we go through that right wall right there to take down another Petra so we can create a staircase. Yeah, very useful when they're throwing everything they got at us. Enemies we haven't even seen before in this quest yet. And this is going to lead us to the final area. Again, much simpler of a layout comparatively. Again, of course there's some dead ends and Different areas meant to keep you in this dungeon for longer than you need to be if you don't know the right way to go, but if you do know what you're doing, much faster than the final dungeon in the initial quest, as we might die right here, actually. Depends how quickly we can touch there we go. The B button. And we'll have some blue life water for the ride home. Zelda might need some, being all kidnapped and all. Hopefully, Ganon's been feeding her. Hopefully Bob fed you, because I ate your dinner. Couldn't help myself. Gary, take us home.
Boss beaters.
Again, you can anticipate Ganon's movement based on his shot locations to kind of see where he's trending. Get ahead of that kind of trending location to know where he's going next, or make that educated guess and stab. If you got him in the right spot, he'll appear for a second. Do this 4 times and eventually he'll turn brown. Get your silver arrows out at this point and get him with 1 silver arrow to take him down. And just like that, you have beaten The Legend of Zelda. Congratulations, this is a classic.
Yep, first quest, second quest, whatever it is. Leave that mood light in there. I like that we are coordinating our outfits, by the way. Here at the end of the second quest. Once again, the hero of Hyrule. Do we get any sort of a different ending right here for the second quest? Finally, peace returns to Hyrule. This ends the story. No, that's the exact same message, but I think we'll get something different after the credits here. And I know it's a different time, and I've probably said this before, but man, back in the days when you could make a classic like this with a team of like 7 or 8 people, just mind-boggling. Over the course of, less than a year as well. But you are great. As the number of continues that we use, essentially the saves. You have an amazing wisdom and power. End of The Legend of Zelda 1. There you go, definitively. End of a classic. The second quest of a classic. That's our time for this week, though. If you haven't already done so, please consider subscribing to enroll in these classes. We do one of these classes every single week in the same spot. Love to have you enrolled. And leave a comment, click that like button as well if you don't mind. Really does help us out to make future classes for you. But that's it for us. Thanks to all my TAs today. We'll see you next week in the same spot for next week's class right here on Video Games 101. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and comment on this video, and click subscribe if you haven't already, as this seriously helps me to keep making great content for you. And check the description of this video to see what song is playing right now.
Train stations in November, train stations.